Well, I'm sure you've been watching the news that many of the hostages have been released. All of the hostages on the Israeli side have now been released, all of the living hostages, and there are still thousands of hostages being held by Israel on the Palestinian side, but many people were celebrating today the return of their family members. I can only imagine the joy that they're feeling. For both sides, people just feeling absolutely relieved to see their loved ones again, people that they thought maybe they would never, ever see again. So you could, we've all been watching this. It's been great news. There were 20 that were released on the Israeli side. So far today, a total of 250 Palestinian political prisoners were released today. It is part of a deal where they're supposed to be releasing 2,000 in total Palestinian hostages. But right now they've only released 250. So let me just play for you. I just want to play one of these videos for you of the Palestinians. We've been seeing the Israeli side all day, all of the happiness. We're seeing this on all of the news. So let me just show you a little bit of the Palestinians receiving some of their family members.
هي اللحظات التي يلتقي فيها هذا الأسير مع أسرته.
A mother very happy.
وحزن وبكائها.
Very happy to see their families. So these are all of the families of the Palestinians waiting for their 250 family members. Just think of that. 20 Israelis were released. 250 of the Palestinians were released, and that is only 10% of the Palestinians that Israel has agreed to release. There are still that remain in custody. Who's being released on the Palestinian side? You might say, well, these are all fighters. These are all Hamas. And I cannot believe Israel did this deal. That's what we're hearing from a lot of people. But who are actually these people? Both parties want you to believe they're working for the people. But let's be honest. Washington is bought and paid for. Big corporations in Wall Street get bailed out while working Americans get left with higher prices, shrinking savings, and endless promises that never materialize. The system is corrupt, and when it breaks, they won't be the ones paying the price. We will. That's why I put my trust in something outside of their control. Physical gold and silver from American Hartford Gold. Precious metals are real, tangible, and they've held their value through every economic collapse in history. You can have them delivered straight to your home or secured in a tax-advantaged gold IRA. American Hartford Gold has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of 5-star reviews. And right now, when you call and mention my name, Kim, you can get up to $15,000 in free silver with your purchase. So call 866-584-3884 or text Kim to 65532. That's 866-584-3884 or text Kim, K-I-M, to 65532. Don't wait for politicians to fix a system they benefit from. Protect yourself today. This is from Al Jazeera. A total of 250 Palestinian political prisoners who are either serving life sentences or long sentences are being released from Israeli jails. According to the data obtained by Al Jazeera, all but 9 of these prisoners are from the West Bank. So these are not Gaza fighters, Hamas. And 157 of them are members of Fatah. So they're not even Hamas at all. They're not Hamas. That is the party that controls the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. 65 are from Hamas, and the rest are from smaller political factions. So the majority that they were holding were not even Hamas, were not even from Gaza. The question is then, why was Israel holding them? Why were they, what's Israel doing? Well, they're just rounding people up and holding them. Well, because mainly the news doesn't report on it. And if you could keep things quiet, then you could do whatever you want. In addition, Israel will free 1,718 Palestinians who were, according to the United Nations, forcefully disappeared by Israel over the last 2 years of its genocidal war on Gaza. 5 of them are children under the age of 18. 2 are women, according to the prisoner list obtained by Al Jazeera. According to Adamir, a Palestinian human rights organization tracking political prisoners, the number of people taken captive by Israel increased from 5,200 to 11,100 since October 7th of 2023. The vast majority of these prisoners are from the occupied West Bank, not from Gaza, not Hamas, occupied West Bank, 400 of them children. Where's the outrage? Why is this framed as prisoners versus hostages? And we're letting out the terrorists, but they're from the West Bank. 400 of them are children. Okay, then the question is, once a Palestinian captive is released, that's it, right? Well, no, because guess what happens to a lot of these people? Yeah, that's right. They get rearrested by the Israeli. Israel tends to rearrest Palestinians shortly after they're freed in captive swaps, says Tahani Mustafa, an expert on Israel-Palestine with the European Council on Foreign Relations. In November of 2023, Israel released 240 Palestinian prisoners in a swap for Israeli captives held by Hamas in Gaza as part of a temporary ceasefire deal. Do you remember that? In November, they released mostly women and children and elderly. Weeks later, Israel rearrested 30 of those people. So they release you, but then they tell you, we're going to come back and get you. This is just optics, part of a deal. It says Israel has a long history of using incarceration and arrest as a political weapon, and sometimes that could be for bargaining purposes for a later date. There's also no guarantee with this current deal that those being released won't be rearrested again. While 96 of the 250 high-level political prisoners are being released to the West Bank and Gaza, about 154 of them are being deported from Palestine to third countries that have not yet been announced. So they're not even letting them go home to their families. I mean, this is how the Israelis play the game versus the Palestinians. They just gave them back their hostages. Israel holds many, many times more hostages, deports them to countries, rearrests them right after, and yet the Palestinians are the bad guys. That's the narrative that we have in the mainstream media. It says, according to WAFA, the 154 have been taken to Egypt, but that will not be the final destination for all of them. Israel may decide not to release everyone until it also retrieves the bodies of 28 deceased Israeli captives, which are expected over the next 72 hours. So that is what we're dealing with when it comes to the difference. I want to show you this image here. This is from mainstream news. And just look at the difference between how they treat the Palestinians versus the Israelis. I mean, you could see right here where it says, this is a clear discrepancy, calling hostages, like, look at this, hostages reuniting with families as Trump greeted with cheers in Israeli parliament. And then down below there, this is from Media Lens, who put this out on X. And that one, here, let me just move that lower third for you. Watch Palestinian prisoners released in West Bank to rupturous crowds. So that's it. Palestinian prisoners. The difference in the framing, hostages versus prisoners. Here's a woman saying, no, these people are also hostages, and let me explain why.
Well, first of all, let's say that there is a ceasefire. I think the international community should not stand by and look at what's happening. They need to continue to be involved in putting pressure, first of all, for ceasefire, freeing all hostages from both sides, and then withdrawal of the Israeli army from Gaza.
When you say hostages from both sides, do you mean the prisoners?
And the prisoners. Yes.
And the prisoners.
Yes.
So what do you mean by Palestinian hostages? Do you mean the people who have been arrested and just locked up without trial?
Yes, of course. There are thousands of Palestinians who are kidnapped from their houses under administrative orders with no trial, with no possibility to know what they are charged of, and they are kept in prison. What can you call such a thing?
No kidding. What do you call that? I mean, that's what they're calling the Israelis that were captured. They're saying, well, you're not a prisoner. Even though you're held captive, you don't have a trial. They're saying you're a hostage. Well, what is the difference? What is the difference? This is also making the rounds online today. A lot of people saying, what is going on? There are no women. 20 men released, no women. So no women survived. This is the hysteria and the narrative of people who are just, I just think they must, I can't imagine them being stupid. So it must be, and I don't think they're ignorant. So I think they're really, truly just bad faith people. They know that the women were already released. But here's Rabbi Shmuley anyway. Amidst the celebrations, watching how every female hostage was murdered, not one female hostage survivor, is sickening beyond words. Hamas are animals and Nazis, he says. They must have gotten the directive to say this from Israel because, this is the marching, this is their online soldiers, right? So Laura Loomer says, all the female hostages are dead. Where's the outrage? Savages. I don't think they're stupid because they know that that most of the women were actually released in November of 2023. So I just think they must be operating from a bad faith spot. Like they know this is false, but they're doing it anyway. And this is the clearest example I've really seen of them blatantly lying through their teeth. Peter Sweden, who I typically like for many of his positions, but he says, no female hostages survived Hamas. Why isn't Greta Thunberg and the left outraged? Because it's not true. These are female hostages that were released. There were plenty. In fact, 41 women were taken in total as hostages out of the 251 hostages, I believe there were. 41 of them were women. 31 were released alive via negotiations, most of them in November of 2023. 3 of them were rescued, and 7 were killed. And we don't know exactly how they were killed because some of the hostages said that other hostages were killed by Israeli missiles that buried them under the rubble. But we've seen many videos, and Noah Argamani is one of the most famous of all of the hostages that was released, but most of the women were released. So they're just acting as bad faith actors. You know, Noah here, the one partying when she got out, this is, you know, she's the most famous face of the female hostages. And I mean, they know these people are out. They know these women made it out. So they're just bad faith actors, I think. But that is one of the narratives we are seeing online. So just when you hear that, because you will inevitably in your life, people that are pro-Israel telling you about Hamas as, well, they killed all the female hostages. No, the female hostages were negotiated. Most of them got out because of the early negotiations. In those early negotiations, it was women, children, and elderly first. That's who they were that's who they agreed to release. That is why the 20 who we're seeing released now are fighting aged men, because that's who Hamas kept the longest. So it's not true. And you could just tell anybody who tells you that the women were all killed, that is absolutely not true. Okay, another big question we're seeing about the end of this war. Here's Ben Shapiro. I'm sorry I have to subject you to this. But Ben Shapiro asking, many people are asking the same thing. Oh, now that there's a ceasefire agreement, now that the war is over, where's the celebrations coming from the Palestinians? We're seeing the celebrations coming from the Israelis, and all the Israelis are cheering that they're getting their hostages back. But why aren't we seeing the celebrations from the pro-Palestinian side? And their answer to that, those who keep asking this question, what they're implying, or what they flat out say, is that that's because the pro-Palestine protesters, it's not about ending the war. It's not about peace. They're just genocidal against Jews. That's what it is. So let's watch Ben Shapiro. Again, sorry.
I do have a question. Where are all the people who kept yelling about genocide? Where did they go? Like, seriously, where did they go? Because all the people who are screaming about genocide now, a deal's on the table that stops all of this, that frees hostages, that stops the bombing campaign in Gaza, that rolls back the Israeli military presence to a decided upon line. And they've all ghosted the internet. They're gone. They disappeared. Poof, they're just gone. It's kind of amazing. Now, you would imagine that if you spent 2 years fighting against an actual genocide, not a fake genocide like what's happening in Gaza, which is not by any stretch of the imagination or any definition ever a genocide, but imagine that you were fighting like a real genocide, like the Rwandan genocide, and a deal happened to stop the genocide. And then all the people who were fighting to stop it just disappeared. They didn't say anything. They didn't celebrate. They didn't say this is a good thing. They didn't give credit. They didn't try to, nothing. They just go totally silent. What might that tell you about those people? I mean, the first thing would be that they don't actually care about the supposed genocide, right? That would be the thing that would immediately pop to mind, that you didn't care about that it was all a lie, that you actually had another reason that you were doing this routine. The Washington Free Beacon has an excellent rundown of many of these so-called anti-genocide activists who have gone completely missing, like completely MIA. Mehdi Hassan over at MSNBC, right, former MSNBC personality, who now spends his days on the internet talking with wild lefties and people who like Marjorie Taylor Greene, as we'll get to in a moment. He put out a statement, I love that we live in a world where we're all supposed to now praise Trump for his peacemaking and ignore the fact that at least 20,000 Palestinians have been killed on his watch with bombs and bullets and rhetorical support that he supplied to Israel. I mean, Mehdi seems pretty salty about the fact that Trump actually got to the end of this thing. He then went on to predict that Israel will violate the terms of the deal and all the rest. Like, not a moment of credit for Trump. Instead, no. We're supposed to be upset with Trump that the things that were necessary to get to the peace happened.
You know, Ben, we don't trust the Israelis. That's why we're not celebrating, because we've been here before in this very war, in fact. Remember the 3-phase deal? And Israel and Hamas went through phase 1, and Hamas released those hostages, all those women that we just saw, the supposed women who've been killed. And what happened after phase 1 was complete? Oh, Israel decided to renege on the deal, backtrack completely after Hamas fulfilled their phase 1 of the deal and said, actually, we want to renegotiate, and we want to, and we're going to just bomb you to oblivion until you renegotiate with us. And Hamas says, we already negotiated with you. We came to an agreement, and now you're backtracking. You're backpedaling on this deal. And the Trump administration let the Israelis do that. So who's to say they're not going to do it again? And let me show you some evidence as to why people are extremely hesitant and not trusting of the Israelis. Not to mention they've just lied about everything in the war. But here you've got Times of Israel. This is coming from the mouth of your own people, Ben Shapiro. Your countrymen, the Israelis, your true home, your very Israel first. It says right here, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that Israel's military campaign has not yet ended and warned of unspecified major security challenges that Israel would need to face in the near future. Then goes on to say, the Israeli government has only voted to approve the first phase of Trump's plan, but not to end the war altogether. That is why we're not celebrating, because the Israelis have not actually declared an end to the war. Trump has, but the Israelis actually have not. What people in Israel were really celebrating was not the end of the war, was not the end of the bloodshed or the genocide of the Palestinian people. They were celebrating, rightfully so, the return of their hostages. That's what they were celebrating. And people in Palestine are also celebrating the return of their hostages. But we don't trust Israel. So we're not celebrating just yet when it comes to this being the end of the war. There has been 100 years of history that has shown us this is not the end, that this is just a pause, because Israel has an end game. And what is that? Take all of the land, clear all of the people. That has been the end game from day one. And we all know that. And so, no, we're not cheering. Here's a reporter that actually brings this up to Donald Trump and says, Netanyahu has not said, he's never once said that this is the end of the war. What do you have to say about that?
Mr. President, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, has not gone so far as to say the war is over. In your view, is the war over?
The war is over. The war is over. Okay. Do you understand that?
Okay, so what is Trump? Is he going to actually hold Netanyahu accountable this time? The war is over, he says. The war is over. Trump often goes back on his word. He is famous for that, actually, changing his mind. He's extremely mercurial. Some ways that's good. Other ways, in instances like this, it's very bad when he just allows Israel to do whatever Israel wants to do. So we'll see. Will Trump actually hold Netanyahu's feet to the fire and say it's over? It's absolutely over. Now, already the chatter online, of course, by the pro-Israel crowd, here's Ben Shapiro blaming the pro-Palestinian protesters for not celebrating and cheering that the war is over. Meanwhile, you've got a bunch of pro-Israel mouthpieces online claiming all the women were killed and that there should be outrage over that, which is false. It's just meant to gin up anger, to get people to support the eradication of these animalistic Palestinians that killed all the women. That is what that is for. That is why they're saying those things to us. That is why they're lying to us, because they're genocidal maniacs. Because Laura Loomer and Rabbi Shmuley are genocidal maniacs, and they want to lie to you to rile you up to get you to go along with their genocide. That is the only reason why they're lying to you, and they know they're lying to you. They're also saying Hamas is out there and they're executing people, and these people are animals, and they were supposed to give up their guns, and now they're out there. We're seeing videos of them marching the streets, rounding people up and executing them. So what aspect of this is true or not true? It is true that Hamas has started deploying armed fighters and police across parts of Gaza. It is true that there have been some reports that they have also rounded up some dissidents, and that they have taken to executing dissidents who fought on behalf of Israel, people that were traitors to the other side, people that were collaborators with Israel. There are some reports through Telegram channels that say that some collaborators and traitors have been targeted. It's not like widespread. It's not what we know is not widespread. It's not like a mandate coming from these Hamas police forces, but that it is happening. And that is probably true. That happens in every war. It's terrible, but this is why many of us, for example, were really upset about the pullout of Afghanistan and leaving behind the collaborators, the American collaborators, those who collaborate with America, leaving them to die. It's wrong. You should never do that. So Israel should have pulled out their collaborators. But what did Israel do? No, they didn't pull out their collaborators. So who are you going to blame for this? Because we know that at the end of every war, the collaborators get targeted, the collaborators are killed. So what do we usually do? We get the collaborators out. Those who worked with us, we get them to safety. We promise them that when they start working with us to begin with. So what did Israel promise these collaborators, and why are they now dead? And rather than just blaming that on Hamas, maybe you should blame that on Israel too. Why were they using these people and probably promising them safety and probably promising them whatever it was that they promised, only to leave them to die when the war was over? They could have pulled them out. They didn't. So who are you going to blame? Every military in the world seeks out collaborators, and the right thing to do is to protect them when the war ends. But this is also something that's going on. As part of that, this is one of the famous journalists that was, he's been killed. He was, this is who he was here. Really unfortunate, but this is a famous journalist. This is Salah al-Jafarawi, and he was killed by members of the Israel-linked militia, the collaborators. He was killed by collaborators. And he's, after the war supposedly ended, he was killed by collaborators. And so that is what Hamas, the police force that they have deployed throughout Gaza, part of them, they're saying, look, there's still violence, there's gangs, there's rivals, and we need to police the area because you can't just leave the enclave without any police. And Trump actually agrees with that.
Hamas rearming, instituting themselves as a Palestinian police force, shooting rivals. What is your message to Hamas?
We are standing because they do want to stop the problems, and they've been open about it, and we gave them approval for a period of time. You have to understand, they've lost probably 60,000 people. That's a lot of retribution. They've lost 60,000 people. And the ones that are living right now were, in many cases, very young when this all started. And we are having them watch that there's not going to be big crime or some of the problems that you have when you have areas like this that have been literally demolished. You have 2 million people, and probably it'll be less than that, but you have close to 2 million people going back to buildings that have been demolished. And a lot of bad things can happen. So we want it to be safe. I think it's going to be fine.
Mr. President,
who knows for sure, Katie? But I think it's going to be fine.
Mr. President.
Okay. Reasonable enough. He says, yeah, they need a police force. They have some security and safety issues. So yeah, we've allowed them to rearm and police their enclave at the moment. Okay, so Ursula von der Leyen, she, yes, I said her name right, Ursula von der Leyen. She says the return of the Israeli hostages is a moment of pure joy for those families and a moment of relief for the entire world. It means that a page can be turned, a new chapter can begin. Europe fully supports the peace plan brokered by the United States, Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey. That's how you pronounce Turkey now. The finalization of the agreement ending the war today in Sharm el-Sheikh will be a historical milestone. We stand ready to contribute to its success with all the tools of our disposal, in particular by providing support on governance and for the reform of the Palestinian Authority. We will be an active force within the Palestinian Donors Group, and we will provide EU funding for the reconstruction of Gaza. What are you talking about? Turn a page, end a chapter. This was a genocide. And the fact that people now want to just gloss over that and act like Israel didn't commit one of the most atrocious, heinous acts we've ever seen in our lives. In fact, it was the single most heinous act we have seen in our lives. And it was a genocide. We watched it live stream. We watched babies blown up and murdered and shot, live streamed. We heard of little girls, 5 years old, being shot hundreds of times while she's waiting to be rescued. We saw babies in ICUs rot to death. We saw children buried under rubble, entire families wiped out. We saw schools, hospitals, mosques, apartment buildings leveled for no reason other than to just level them. And yet we're supposed to just turn a page. We're supposed to just end the chapter. No, this was a genocide. And this graphic here really illustrates from the National some of the phrases that were said. You know, I mean, look at some of these phrases. No Arab will remain in Gaza. These are the words of Israeli leaders. No one, says here, Israel should make Gaza look like Auschwitz Museum. Aid trucks continue to enter Gaza. Enough. Like, stop the aid trucks. It's not Hamas that should be eliminated. Raise Gaza. It's an entire nation out there that's responsible. It's not true, this rhetoric about civilians not being involved. And we're supposed to just turn a page on genocide? Is that how you treated the Nazis after their genocide? Did you just turn a page? No, in fact, the genocide of the 30s and 40s has continued to be used in order to gin up support and arms and even to support this current genocide. It wasn't just the page was turned the minute the war was over and let's just move on and let's just forget about it. No, that is not how this works. I mean, look at the destruction. Now that we're able to get reports again coming out of Gaza, look at what Gaza looks like. Here's a reporter from Al Jazeera showing us the heart of Gaza now.
I've been walking for the past 45 minutes and I'm telling you, every meter that I walked through, I could see the sign of life that was here. The charred signboard of a pharmacy, the bicycle that was tangling from the rubble. This is the closest area to the agreed upon withdrawal line of the Israeli military. In the background, you see that area where Palestinians displaced from their own homes are unable to get to that part of the eastern part of Gaza City. We are right on Al Jala Road, one of Gaza's main lifelines, the busy street that used to be filled with many of the shops, the apartment blocks, and the residential clusters full of life has just turned into a vast field of rubble. As you can see, all of these buildings have been newly destroyed by the Israeli military in the past few weeks. The use of explosive armed vehicles, the airstrikes, the drone attacks, the bulldozer that were aggressively operating in this area, leaving many people, as you can see in the background, are searching through the rubble and through the debris for whatever they are able to salvage of what they left when they were forced out of their homes. This is not just about destruction. This is dismantling civilian life as a whole for Palestinians. Hani Mahmoud, Al Jazeera, from the heart of Gaza.
That's the heart of Gaza, is what he says, from the heart of Gaza. I mean, look at this. And they just want us to turn a page. They just want us to turn a page. By the way, the number of, let me just show you this map here. This is over the years, just so that we can understand that this isn't just one war and the war is over and, oh, these two countries, they just went at it and that's it. No, this is what Israel's been doing to Palestine year after year after year, and why so many people are not celebrating the end of this war, because this is just one war in many. I mean, you had the Nakba in 1947-48. You had the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. You had the First Intifada, the Second Intifada, the Gaza War in 2008. They called it Cast-Lead. The Gaza War, the Pillar of Defense. They called it in 2012. The Gaza War, Protective Edge. These are all the names that Israel gives it. In 2014, Gaza War again, called Guardian Walls in 2021. And now you have Iron Swords, the Gaza War of 2023. So this is just one of many. And each time they use this and they go in and they take more land from the West Bank, more than anywhere. But look at what Palestine used to be versus what it is today. And the Israelis say, well, just don't fight wars you can't win. they're fighting to keep their land because you've invaded them and you're taking the land. And this is, they're fighting to keep it. I mean, that's what people do when they come to the land, when others come to the land and try to take it. I want to play for you this one last thing. Trump is in the Middle East right now. And I'm just going to, he's speaking to the Israeli Knesset. I'm just going to play this clip and we'll talk about it after. I mean, this is actually quite shocking.
Broken promises from many other American presidents, you know that. They kept promising. I never understood it until I got there. There was a lot of pressure put on these presidents. It was put on me too, but I didn't yield to the pressure. But every president for decades said, we're going to do it. The difference is I kept my promise and officially recognized the capital of Israel and moved the American embassy to Jerusalem. Isn't that right, Miriam? Look at Miriam. She's back there. Stand up, Miriam. Stand up. Miriam and Sheldon would come into the office. They'd call me. He'd call me. I think they had more trips to the White House than anybody else I could think of. Look at her sitting there so innocently. She's got 60 billion in the bank, 60 billion. And I think she's saying no more. And she loves Israel, but she loves it. And they would come in, and her husband was a very aggressive man, but I loved him. He was a very aggressive, very supportive of me. And he'd call up, can I come over and see you? I say, Sheldon, I'm the president of the United States. It doesn't work that way. He'd come in and would do. But they were very responsible for so much, including getting me thinking about Golan Heights, which is probably one of the greatest things to ever happen to Israel. Miriam, stand up, please. She really is. I mean, she loves this country. She loves this country. Her and her husband are so incredible. We miss him so dearly. But I actually asked her, I'm going to get her in trouble with this, but I actually asked her once, I said, so Miriam, I know you love Israel. What do you love more, the United States or Israel? She refused to answer. That might mean Israel, I must say. We love you. Thank you, darling, for being here. That's a great honor. Great honor. She's a wonderful woman.
What? Excuse me? I'm sorry, you're the president of the United States of America. I get it. You're standing in front of an Israeli flag right now with no trace of the U.S. flag nearby, but Miriam Adelson is supposedly an American citizen. And he's sitting there as the president of the United States saying that her and her husband visited the White House more than anyone. And when asked who she's loyal to, she refused to answer. And he's cheering that on. He's praising it, saying, we love you. You're so great. It's an honor. You're an honor. I mean, are you kidding me? This is what Americans are fed up with. This is why you've lost Gen Z, Israel, because you played your hand too far. I mean, this is over the top. This is too much. This is treason. The president of the United States is admitting that he allowed traitors in the White House more often than anyone else, people advocating for the benefit of a foreign country. He allowed traitors into the White House, American citizens who have pledged their allegiance through their citizenship to the United States of America, and yet have displayed full loyalty to Israel and even won't say they're more loyal to the United States. That's called a traitor. And a president who lets them into their office over and over and over again, knowing that this is the way they are, and then taking direction from them, saying that they're responsible for the Golan Heights, for Israel annexing part of Syria, that they're responsible for him moving the embassy to Jerusalem. They're he's admitting that they are influencing American foreign policy. Traitors in the White House. And you know what that makes Donald Trump? That makes him a traitor to the country. Not protecting Americans, not protecting Americans' interest. Leading to terrorist attacks. How many terrorist attacks were attempted or actually implemented in the Western world after the Golan Heights was annexed? I don't know the answer to that, but I'd imagine it wasn't zero. I'd imagine that there were a lot of pissed off people whose land is being stolen and Israelis waging war and bombing 7 countries, and they're probably pretty mad about it, and they're probably wanting to take it out on Americans. So that means Donald Trump has put Americans in harm's way by doing things on behalf of Israel for traitors that he allowed into the White House. Does anybody else see a major problem with this? We all should. This is extremely frightening. And yet it's being allowed and people aren't even talking about this. This is outrageous. Now I'm hoping, we could say all the Trump supporters are going to want to try to figure out a way to excuse this. Well, I got one for you. Maybe he's just trying to keep himself alive. Maybe he just doesn't want to get shot and killed in the neck. So maybe he's saying, hey, look, I know I ended the war. I know that I've told Bibi Netanyahu, nope, the war is over. That's it. You're not annexing the West Bank. The war is over and the Palestinians get to come back. And I've said that. And this time I'm going to mean it. But before you kill me, remember, I moved the embassy to Jerusalem. Remember, I took the Golan Heights. Remember, I've let you into the White House a bunch. I'm your friend. Remember, I'm your friend. Don't kill me. That's the only way I can make sense of this, unless he is just a fully compromised traitor to the United States of America, the sitting president. Wow. I don't know, guys. We are... Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. It is free for you to watch. Again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, KimIversonShow.com. See you there.